Good afternoon, everyone. It's really wonderful to have you join us today. I'm Trudy Mitchell, the CEO of Australia for UNHCR. Today we're talking about the unfolding drought and food crisis in the Horn of Africa. Currently, it's estimated that 20 million people are facing extreme hunger as the region grapples with the worst drought in 40 years.
Since 2020 or around 2020, many parts of the eastern part of the Horn of Africa have received very little rain. And we're expecting a fifth failed rainy season later on this year, which is going to be even more devastating. So the impact really has been mainly on livestock. And of course, a lot of these people are farmers, so they're leaving their farmland. And that's adding to the crisis too, because they're not farming and growing crops.
As a result, we have people who are displaced, who leave their livelihood, and then they go into the displaced places, and then they are there waiting for food supply. And of course, there is a cut of food, 50% in the camp. Imagine then outside. So then food insecurity, sexual gender-based violence, and the people continue fighting, and it becomes very, very violent. As you can see, in South Sudan, it's a really large country, and it's experiencing drought, flooding, intercommunal violence. In this photo, it's in the Upper Nile, where the flooding, it's not coming from the rain, it's coming from Lake Victoria together with Nile. And then if you see Upper Nile, it's completely covered with water. So people are moving to the higher land with their animals. At the same time, it's also the intercommunal fighting where the people with the cows, they're coming to the Eastern Equatoria where people are farming, where they are eating their crops, and then they start fighting between them.
Water, sanitation, and hygiene, we all know is a basic human right. And as UNHCR and partners, we manage very large systems, very complex water systems. So in emergencies, we have to scale up because then when new arrivals come in, they put pressure on what we are already providing. And yet, if you don't provide these waters, there's always potential conflict. The new arrivals come, put pressure on what is already existing. And then small fights start at a water point. It escalates into a tribal clash. And before you know it, there is water conflict. For sanitation, it's even more difficult because then funding to sanitation subsector has been really dwindled. It's difficult to sell sanitation and washing latrines than to sell water supply.
So if I describe our area, we are a couple of hundred kilometers away from the national electricity grid. We are more than 500 kilometers away from the next tarmac road. There's no water supply systems apart from the water supply systems that have been put in place as part of the humanitarian response for refugees. So in a way, the refugee camps, it's a bit ironic, are better off than the surrounding communities in terms of access to water. And I've worked in the humanitarian field for 16 years or a bit more now, and the level of malnutrition and desperation I've not seen many times before. So what we have been trying in Melpomene is really to break this cycle and try to invest at a larger scale than usual into irrigating land that is jointly cultivated by refugees and host communities. So we are irrigating currently more than 1,000 hectares of land. And by doing that and by expanding this effort, we are trying to support local food production and in a way support the resilience of people. The premise is that if we speak about protecting refugees and providing asylum space for refugees, the best protection is for us to invest in inclusive and equitable local development. So we cannot support refugees in camps and have the surrounding communities not have access to this support.
So since the beginning of the war in February this year, there have been major disruptions to supply chains, with Russia blocking Ukraine's Black Sea ports, as you'd know. Recently, we had the UN-Turkey brokered deal between Russia and Ukraine, which has seen shipments of grain and other products resume.
You know, that the wheat that the WFP had just bought from Ukraine has made its way to Djibouti and will hopefully be going to Ethiopia. But that's just really a drop in the ocean. As you mentioned there, huge amounts of wheat, fertilizer, sunflower oil, etc., were sourced from Ukraine, and not just Ukraine, Russia too, Belarus as well. So the impact has been devastating, not just because those supplies have been cut, but also because of this uncertainty around food supplies.
It means that households are having half rations, live on one meal a day, and are scrambling to buy food in the local market. We are providing supplementary feeding for malnourished children, and the rate of, or the percentage of malnourished children has gone up dramatically. So what we usually do is we provide these plumpy nuts, these energy, very nutritious energy bars as a supplement to families, and so that they can address the malnutrition of the child. Families just share the supplements that are meant for a child to address the malnutrition of the child. They share it among 8-10 people because there's not enough food on the table. So they cut the small bars in small pieces, and the whole family benefits. And obviously the effect on the child is very reduced.
So thanks to all of you for joining us today. A special thanks to our incredible panelists who are working in really challenging circumstances there in Africa. And we're hoping that we're going to be able to raise some much needed funds to help this situation. Thank you very much.